From the dawn of time, we humans have told stories. Stories of love won and lost, tales of tragedy and triumph, fables, fantasies, and folk tales. The best of these stories and their characters have stood the test of time, having been told over and over in various forms throughout the ages. They've survived because they reveal things about us that we might not otherwise discover. The truly great stories may or may not be factual, but they tell the truth. Now, Lyman Frank Baum was an American author, best known for writing The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, which was published in 1900. He wrote 13 Oz sequels and a host of other works, and his stories were fantasies, but they imagined a lot of things that would later appear as reality, things like television, laptop computers, and wireless telephones. And behind Baum's fantasies, there were always truths to be discovered, lessons to be learned. Baum started writing as a very young boy. He was fascinated by printing, and his father bought him an inexpensive printing press, and Baum started a weekly newspaper, which he wrote and printed and distributed himself. It included advertising. It was called the Roselawn Home Journal. And once he reached adulthood in 1882, he married Maud Gage, who was the daughter of Matilda Jocelyn Gage, a famous women's suffragist. And his mother-in-law's feminist politics were sympathetically channeled by Baum into his Oz books. And whenever Susan B. Anthony visited their hometown, she stayed with the Baums. Originally a Methodist, Baum and his wife became members of the Theosophical Society in 1892. This is a metaphysical approach to life with which you may be familiar. And Baum's metaphysical beliefs were often reflected in his writings. Now, the MGM movie that we've all seen is one of those rare instances where the movie was actually better than the book. But considering its production history, it's amazing that anyone even remembers the film. It had, at the time, no big stars. The studio wanted Shirley Temple to play the part of Dorothy. 20th Century Fox refused to loan her to MGM. They offered $75,000 to W.C. Fields to play the Wizard. Fields wanted $100,000, so he didn't get hired. Ray Bolger was hired to play the Tin Man. He convinced the producers that his dancing style would be more suited to the Scarecrow. Well, for the part of the Scarecrow, they'd already hired Buddy Ebsen, so they switched him to the Tin Man. But after a few days of shooting, he was hospitalized with a severe, nearly fatal allergic reaction to the aluminum dust in the Tin Man makeup. So Jack Haley became the Tin Man instead. Margaret Hamilton was not the studio's first pick for the Wicked Witch of the West, and she got the job just 3 days before filming started. They wanted Jerome Kern to write the music, but he was too weak from a recent heart attack to do the job. Their third choice was Harold Arlen and E. Yip Harburg, who wrote some of the most memorable songs ever heard in a movie. And unbelievably, the studio tried repeatedly to get Over the Rainbow cut out of the film. Those who made the film, from the script writers to the makeup artists, the art director, and the special effects people, are not noted for much of anything else. The lesson is that so-called ordinary people can create a masterpiece. And the movie was not a big success when it opened in 1939. Some of the greatest movies ever made came out that year. Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Dark Victory, Of Mice and Men, and many other memorable masterpieces, including Stagecoach. Oz didn't even turn a profit when it was first released. It was television that turned The Wizard of Oz into a much-loved classic. You probably remember the story, but I watched the film again this week for the first time in several years, and there were quite a few things that I had forgotten about. So briefly, Dorothy and Toto live on a farm in Kansas, and they get into trouble by getting in the way of the farm hands, and Auntie Em scolds her and says, "Why don't you go someplace where you won't cause any trouble?" And pouting, Dorothy and Toto go off, and she says, "I wonder, find yourself a place where you won't get into any trouble." A place where there's no trouble. Is there such a place? There must be, somewhere, over the rainbow. Well, life may seem better over the rainbow, but as Dorothy will learn, there is no place like home. And likewise, there's no place we can go where Spirit will be any more present than where we are right now. Well, as the story continues, the mean old Elmira Gulch, cranky old woman who owns half the county, has it out for Toto, and she gets a sheriff's order to grab the dog and have him put down. So Dorothy and Toto decide to run away. And they've not been on their merry way for very long when they run into a fellow named Professor Marvel, who seems to know the past, the present, and the future. He's a kindly old humbug who has spent his life on the road selling snake oil, a bit of magic, and a lot of common sense. And he advises Dorothy to go back home, which she does, but as she gets there, a tornado hits. And as she's in the little farmhouse, she and Toto and the house are transported into the stratosphere, and then they crash land in Oz, right in the middle of Munchkin Land, and they crash land on the Wicked Witch of the East. Well, they meet some strange characters, including Glenda the Good Witch of the North and the Munchkins, and they notice the feet sticking out from under the house have magical ruby slippers. And about this time, the Wicked Witch of the West shows up to try to procure those slippers. But before she can get them, Glenda casts a spell, and the slippers end up on Dorothy's feet. Dorothy's amazed, of course, but her pressing concern is getting home to Kansas. How can she get home? She's all alone in a strange world. But she discovers that we're never really alone. Wherever we go, there are people who are available to love, people who are ready to help us, people who need our help. And they might look a little bit funny, like the Scarecrow or the Tin Man or the Lion, but if we can see the divine in whomever we meet, they will see the divine in us. Well, Glenda tells Dorothy that the great Wizard of Oz, who lives in the Emerald City, can help her get home to Kansas. And so she sets out on the yellow brick road to see the great wizard. Pretty soon she comes to a fork in the road, and she wonders out loud, which way should I go, this way or that way? And she hears a voice saying, this way. Well, who said that? And then she realizes it's the Scarecrow. He says this way, but he says this way is a very good way too, but I don't know which way is the best because I don't have a brain. And Dorothy points out that if he can talk, he must have a brain. To which the Scarecrow replies, sometimes people without brains can do an awful lot of talking. Well, what the Scarecrow really needed was a different way of thinking about himself. But as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And the Scarecrow would have to learn the hard way to have a better opinion of himself. And sometimes you and I must learn the hard way too, to have a better opinion of ourselves. You know, it's said that we only use 10% of our brains or our minds. Some people say 5%, some people say whatever, 3%. The truth is we use less than 1% of our mental capacity because we are all immersed in and part of a great infinite mind. Mind, therefore, will always be our final frontier because mind has no limits. Well, Dorothy invites the Scarecrow to travel with her to see the great wizard, and maybe he can give him a brain. But during the journey, the Scarecrow proves to be a genius at figuring things out. Along the way, they come upon a man made of tin, the Tin Woodman, who is rusted solid. And after oiling his joints, he comes to life and starts bemoaning the fact that he has no heart. Of course, as the story unfolds, the Tin Man, we learn, is almost hopelessly sentimental. And his friends have to keep telling him not to cry because he'll rust shut again. And he turns out to be the heart and soul of the team. And without his heart, they never would have been encouraged to make the journey. It's interesting to note that Baum wrote this story during a period when jobs that had always been done by people were beginning to be done by machines. And the concern was that the world was becoming a heartless, mechanical place. So, Dorothy, Toto, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man enter the dark and forbidding forest. But when they run into a lion, they learn that he is afraid of them, afraid of everything, afraid of his own shadow. He bemoans the fact that he has no courage. Well, the truth is, it takes no courage to act when you're not afraid. Courage is the determination to move forward when your knees are knocking, your hands are shaking, your mouth is dry, and your palms are sweaty. Mark Twain tells us that to believe yourself to be brave is to be brave. And no matter how scared he was, and most of the time he was quaking in his fur, the lion always perseveres and moves forward. He already has the courage he thinks he needs. And throughout our lives, we are called upon to exhibit courage, whether something dramatic like saving someone from a terrible accident, or something more personal like saying, "I'm sorry," or "I forgive you." We are not meant to go through life barely living it because we are scared. And so Dorothy and Toto and the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion continue their journey to the Emerald City, and to get there, they have to go through the haunted forest, and they survive that, and then they have to go through a field of poisonous poppies, and they come out okay on the other side of that. Finally, they reach the city, and they request an audience with the great wizard. And after stalling for quite a bit, he finally agrees to see them. And he says, "I am the great and powerful Oz. Who are you?" And Dorothy says, "Please, sir, I am Dorothy, the small and meek." And the wizard agrees to help them if they can perform a nearly impossible task. He says, "Bring me the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West." Well, it would take an awful lot of determination, creative thought, heart, and courage, but after a difficult journey, they make it to the witch's castle. And after a series of harrowing happenings, they manage to get the witch's broom. And they go back to the wizard to receive their gifts, and he refuses to grant them their wishes. But Dorothy and her friends are no longer small and meek. They've grown in inner strength, and they insist upon their rights. During the argument, Toto pulls back a curtain, revealing an ordinary little man operating machines that created the illusion of a great and powerful wizard. Turns out he wasn't a wizard at all. And Dorothy says, "You're a very bad man." And he replies, "No, my dear, I'm a very good man. I'm just a very bad wizard." Well, he may have been a very bad wizard, but he did know something that Dorothy, the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion did not know. That is, that each one of them already had everything they needed to fulfill their heart's desires. You see, the fact that we aspire to something means that that something already exists within us as potential. Whatever you want to have or do, you have within you the necessary elements to fulfill that desire. And if by chance you don't have it within you, you have the ability to attract the people, places, and things needed to fulfill that desire. The Scarecrow wanted brains, not realizing that he was already a first-class thinker. He tells Dorothy how to get him off of the pole in the cornfield. He figures out that if he taunts the apple trees, they will throw their apples at them, and they'll have something to eat. He came up with the idea of disguising themselves so they could sneak into the witch's castle and rescue Dorothy. And he notices the rope holding up a massive chandelier over the guards' heads, and he uses the Tin Man's axe to cut it down so it traps the guards and allows the little band to escape. For someone without any brains, he is the one who's constantly thinking and solving problems. The Tin Man wanted a heart, not realizing that he was the emotional and caring center of the little group of travelers. The Tin Man never has a harsh word for anyone. He's always helping his friends. He's distraught that his friends are hurting or in danger. He cries easily, rusting himself solid, and his friends have to get him unstuck. For someone with no heart, he's always expressing his emotions freely and constantly demonstrating his kindness. The Cowardly Lion thought that because he was easily frightened, he had no courage. But the truth is, we all experience fear on our journey, and the lion always did the right thing at the right time, in spite of his fear. When the flying monkeys kidnap and carry off Dorothy and Toto, the lion doesn't run away. He joins his friends as they go to Dorothy's rescue. For someone without any courage, he certainly keeps showing up in the face of fear. And Dorothy learned that she had leadership ability. First, she knew where she wanted to go. She had direction. She never stopped thinking about her goal. She wanted to go home, and nothing would discourage her from that, not even chasing ambulances. Haunted forests, poisonous poppies, witch or no witch, Dorothy was going home, period. And secondly, she told everyone she met what her goal was, and she even interested a few of them into adventuring along with her. Now, granted, this was something of a ragtag group. A Scarecrow, a Tin Man, and a Cowardly Lion may not be anyone's first pick of partners on the journey to success, but didn't they believe in her? Didn't they encourage her? Didn't they help her to get where she wanted to go? And they stuck with her, regardless of the challenges they faced. Not such a bad group after all. And it was Dorothy's conviction that kept them by her side and kept them believing in her. And finally, regardless of how many miles she had walked, the real journey had been in recognizing what was truly important to her. She understood the importance of family, friends, values, and the roof over her head. Everything else might have been interesting or even glamorous, but true wisdom comes from within, and Dorothy realized that the greatest part of her journey had happened within. Not bad for a little girl from Kansas. And just before going back to Kansas, her new friends asked Dorothy what she has learned. And she replies, "If I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't look any further than my own backyard. Because if it isn't there, I never really lost it to begin with." It's always about the journey, never the destination. The destination turned out to be a flim-flam man who was pretending to be great and powerful. The destination was nothing. It was the journey that demonstrated that Dorothy and friends were more powerful than they ever dreamed. Dorothy learned to trust herself. She gained confidence in herself. She learned to trust her friends, and she found her own way back home. What she found within had always been there, but she had to take a magical journey to find it. As Sir Thomas Browne wrote, we carry within us the wonders we seek without us. We don't discover what we are until we discover what we can do. Because blessings don't happen to us, blessings happen through us. So here are a few lessons we can learn from the Land of Oz. Accept your friends for who they are. A true friend will help you on your life's journey and help you get through all the problems, big and small, that may arise. Remember who other people are, expressions of the divine, just like you. And in the Namaste consciousness, you can see the gifts in others that they may not be able to see in themselves. So accept your friends, quirks and all. You never know when you'll need them to rescue you from some flying monkeys. Follow your own yellow brick road. Although Glenda, the good witch, directs Dorothy to the yellow brick road, explaining that it will take her to the one person who can get her back home to Kansas, Dorothy surely would have found that road on her own. It was right there in front of her. The hard part wasn't finding it, it was traveling it. So discover your own path in life, what you want to be, where you want to go, how you want to live, and be sure to sing and skip throughout the journey. And don't hide yourself behind a screen. One of the most memorable scenes in the film is when we discover the wizard is just a man. He has no magical powers. He's just a little man spinning dials, amplifying his voice, and projecting a big image. The lesson? Don't try to be something you're not, because the people who matter in this life will love you no matter what. And believe in good, and good things will happen. I wonder what would have happened if Dorothy had chosen to follow the Wicked Witch instead of Glenda. Probably nothing good. Dorothy chose to follow the Good Witch and was helped along her journey. Being positive and believing in the good allows good things to happen in your life. And allow yourself to dream. Whether you want a better home, a more exciting job, or a new relationship, take a moment to look over the rainbow and visualize the possibilities. Dreams really do come true when and if we are true to our dreams. And how are we true to our dreams? By working with them, by working on them. Allow the creative intelligence within you to inspire you to start turning your dreams into reality. So don't sit around waiting for your dreams to come true. Your dreams are waiting for you to come true. No one can do it for you. Glenda informs Dorothy that she's always had the power to go home. And Dorothy asks, "Why didn't you tell me?" And Glenda replies, "Because you have to find out for yourself. You have to start at the beginning. You have to find out for yourself. You have to start at the beginning." Finding out and then getting started, that's the process. And there will always be an excuse not to start. But start we must. Dorothy and her friends spend a lot of time talking about how successful they would be if only they had something that they thought was missing. They all think that maybe the wizard can turn them from what they are into who they think they should be. Of course, we know that no parts are missing. Everything they need is there, but they've not fully awakened to who and what they really are and what they can do. It's only at the end of the journey that they realize that these qualities already exist within them. They learn it's the act of cultivating, developing, and using these gifts, paired with confidence, which will make them exceptional. There is no magic, just diligent, thoughtful, hard work, along with a sustained focus on values and opportunity that will develop what is already before them. So, on our journey, it's not the heart or brain or courage or anything else that's delivered. We are delivered as we discover our spiritual self. Perhaps the greatest lesson from Oz is that we are already what we should be. Just like Dorothy and her friends, the journey is waiting for us to discover the power we are. We need to get started. It's time to stop waiting for inspiration. The wizard doesn't know anything you don't know. It's time to stop waiting for permission. You don't need a passport to travel to Oz. It's time to stop waiting for reassurance. What you need along the way is provided when you need it. It's time to stop waiting for someone to change. Everyone is a perfect idea in the only mind that matters. It's time to stop waiting for the right person to come along. We may meet a good witch or a bad witch, but the journey is up to each one of us. It's time to stop waiting for a clear set of instructions. The yellow brick road will take you where you want to go. It's time to stop waiting for an absence of risk. The only real risk is not starting the journey. It's time to stop waiting for someone to discover you. It's time for you to discover yourself. It's time to stop wishing for a brain. You're part of the mind of God. It's time to stop wishing for a heart. You're an expression of the love of God. It's time to stop wishing for courage. You are energized by the power of God. It's time to start following your own yellow brick road, which will take you to your own personal Oz, where you, and not some little man behind the curtain, you are in charge, twisting your own dials, amplifying your own word, projecting your own image, expressing the great and powerful I am that you are. Follow the yellow brick road. You're off to be the wizard. And so it is.